Last night at 10:30, I realized I could not procrastinate any longer, and I had to decide what to say this morning. Well, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, on my way to sitting down and getting to work, I stumbled upon a graduation present I received from my mother a few days ago. The first 2 beginner books collections of Dr. Seuss. So, 10:30 turned into 11:15 as I reread about Sam I Am and the Cat in the Hat. Anyways, when I finally managed to get to work, my words had a different edge than I had expected. Here is the church, and here is the steeple. When you open the doors, you will find all the people, some old and some young. Here they sit and they wait for this creature before them to elaborate. On what, you may ask, if you are on your toes, but the creature herself just barely knows. You see, it is hard to have insight, and sometimes she may lack in knowledge, being a creature so young, yet to attend college. Not that I don't have knowledge or insight. In fact, you might find that my light shines quite bright. Anyways, I have a much abbreviated story to tell of this creature before you, once not much more than a cell. Once upon a time, I walked through these doors. Well, I crawled, I supposed, for I was on all fours. And later I sang, yes, I sang on this altar, many times in fact, with many a falter. And then in this church I danced under lights that I lit, on a prom night in which I never managed to sit. And I've cried in this room, watched my parents cry too, both in joy and in sorrow. Sometimes it's all you can do. And in this room, I've listened both to echoes and hushes, and the organ today still sends my blood gushing and rushes. So thank you for teaching me all that I know, for guiding the process, for hosting my show. And thank you for forcing me to think on my own instead of allowing a thought process clone. I'm not sorry I'm not here to share with you the answer. Uncertainty dances through me like a professional prancer. In these walls, I've learned facts that could never be proven. If not to be humane, at least I've learned to be human. Thank you.
One of the things our seniors are learning right now is that it's nearly impossible to hear when you sit in that chair. So I'm actually going to invite all of them to come on down to hear these next words with their community here, because these are words I know you're going to want to hear. There is an odd confluence of the universe happening right now. And if you've been feeling it, it's the reflection of something that happened 8 years ago, this same Sunday. This same Sunday, 8 years ago, someone you know and love very much, someone who's become my dear friend, who stood at my wedding to my bride Dana, the Reverend Matthew Cockram, stood in this pulpit and wondered how he would ever say anything valuable to those seniors that I had just spent 3 years with. And as we were chatting last night, he said, there's a certain bit of justice that makes me happy that you have to do that now too. So I asked Matthew if he would, in the tradition of the Apostle Paul and many great teachers of many great traditions, pen a few words, particularly to you who are graduates this day, because he has spent meaningful and important time with you. And so I lift my voice with his words and hope that they bless you. Grace and peace to you, my dear graduates. I trust that the journey has been powerful and good, and I welcome you to this celebration. The journey's not over, though, you know. Oh, the first part of the game's done, yeah. You finished high school, or you're about to. Check. You've celebrated the last gathering with Fountain Club this day. Check. Service trip, check. Alt prom, check. Community service, check. Extracurricular activities, post-high school plans, check, check, check. and now life begins again. I will suggest to you that there are two kinds of games in this life: finite games and infinite games. Finite games are all about winners and losers, rules and roles that never change, the accumulation of titles and successes. These finite games are the ones most of the world will be asking and inviting you to play for the rest of your days. But infinite games, that's what we do here. Infinite games are about keeping the game alive. Roles and rules change to include as many as possible. Instead of titles and successes, infinite games are about continuing to learn and to explore, preparing to be surprised and to engage mystery. Infinite games are the ones you are hopefully embarking on as a result of your life and learning with Fountain Street. So I call you now, my friends, to the challenge of keeping the infinite game foremost in your life. Infinite players prepare themselves to be surprised by the future, and so they play in complete openness. It's not an openness like in candor, but an openness in vulnerability. It's not a matter of exposing one's unchanging identity, the true self that has always been, but a way of exposing one's ceaseless becoming, the dynamic self that has yet to be. So, my friends, prepare yourself to be surprised, to welcome surprise, and to be welcomed by surprise in your life, by virtue of a stance towards life, and such a stance is indeed a stance of faith. You will find yourself becoming a kind of famous. A kind of famous described by the poet Naomi Shihab Nye in her poem, Famous. The river is famous to the fish. The loud voice is famous to silence, which knew it would inherit the earth before anyone said so. The cat sleeping on the fence is famous to the birds, watching him from the birdhouse. The tear is famous briefly to the cheek. The idea you carry close to your heart is famous to your heart. The boot is famous to the earth, more famous than the dress shoe, which is famous only to floors. The bent photograph is famous to the one who carries it, and not all famous to the one who is pictured. I want to be famous to shuffling men who smile while crossing streets, sticky children in grocery stores. Famous is the one who smiled back. I want to be famous in the way a pulley is famous, or a buttonhole. Not because it did anything spectacular, because it never forgot what it could do. My friends, the infinite game will gift you opportunities to be famous, because you will be useful simply by being, simply by smiling, simply by recognizing and honoring the holiness of every other player in this game with you, human, inanimate, and otherwise. May it be so, and amen. And I'll add but a few more words appropriate to the shorter time I've been able to know and be truly graced by you who are graduating this day. Yesterday I had an experience that I've had several times a year for much of the last 2 decades. I was riding around the lake we live close to, And from the distance came a face I knew was familiar, but until it got really close, I couldn't put a name with it. And as he passed by with his wife and a baby in the burly trailer behind, he called out my name and said, "Hey, Jason, it's Brian." He was my youth group student 15 years ago when he was 15. And he's now 30 and a father. And there was a moment of something the ancient writers called the eternal, where we both smiled and nodded and knew that we had been a part of each other's becoming. And I had that same experience a couple of years ago with my then very young kids as we rode up the hill around that same lake, where one who is actually sitting in our congregation today did that same thing. "Hey, Jason." And the name and the face and the memory, and I made sure that she met my daughters. Because the thing I didn't say was, "I hope they become just like you." Because this place had given them permission to become something extraordinary. And so that's what I offer to you this day as you go out into the world, when most of the world is talking about the amazing thing you will someday do that'll probably get you a Nobel Prize. And I have no doubt you're all that smart and that inspired. But what I really hope for you is that someday, 10 and 20 years from now, you get that same gift when the adult leader, or me, or Matthew, or Fred, or Ruth, or Patrick, or Paula, or Steve, or Marilyn, or any of the people of our community that see you on a street simply being happy anyway. And you give us the gift of knowing we wouldn't be here had we not known you. Thank you. I can't wait for that day. It won't be long, I'm sure. May this be so this day for us, one and all. Amen. May God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars and climb on every rung, and may you stay forever young. Lift your voices, friends.